Today I am taking a break from tinctures. I've been making a ton of tinctures and they're all steeping away in our pantry. But today I wanted to make something else. I'm going to make a comfrey salve, which is, if you don't know much about comfrey, it's a plant that has really medicinal leaves, and you can use those leaves to make salves, which are helpful in healing minor wounds like bug bites or minor scratches and cuts, bruises, bumps. Historically, the plant was called knit bone because it was used topically to help heal bones. I like to have comfrey salve just for the minor skin issues that crop up here and again. I like to keep a little pack in the kitchen whenever somebody accidentally burns themselves. And I also just like to have one in our medicine cabinet in case somebody, has a minor scratch or a bug bite that's annoying them. So yeah, the leaves are helpful in managing and reducing mild pain. So you can use the salve on mild back pain, or if you have a joint that's a bit arthritic, it's meant to help with that. If you have any bruises or swelling, you can apply the salve topically to those areas. It's so simple to make, and I have a batch started here that I'm going to turn into the salve today. If you're really into making herbal remedies and maybe you're new to it, make sure to check out the free guide that I've put below with 10 simple herbal remedies that you can make at home for the wintertime. I did it in collaboration with an organization called Grassroots Remedies, and they are a really great team of herbalists who teach people how to forage and how to make their own herbal remedies at home. And I'll leave a link for you to check that out in the description below. So what you need to make this is dried comfrey leaf. I bought mine online. I'll try to find the source again and link it in the description. It's always good to use organic dried herbs if you can find them and afford them. I'm not sure if the one I found was organic. I don't think it was, but whenever I can find it and afford it, I tend to try to get organic. You want to use dried plant material when you're making salves because fresh plant material has a ton of water content in it, and to make a salve, we put the plant material into an oil of some kind and let it sit for a handful of weeks. And when there's water content in the plant material, it makes the oil go rancid more quickly, so I always tend to use dried herbs in salves. So you'll need the dried comfrey leaf, you'll need a carrier oil of some kind. The carrier oil is what carries the medicinal benefits of the plant material. And so you can really choose whatever you want. I'm today going to use extra virgin olive oil because it's what I have. I don't really love to use olive oil because it's really expensive. I buy this one, it's like a big bulk olive oil, cold pressed, but it's pricey, and so I prefer to obviously save it for salads or, eating it. Usually I would go for fractionated coconut oil, but I don't have any right now, so I'm just gonna use my olive oil. But you can also use sweet almond oil. You can use jojoba oil, which is a good option as well. It's like a mid-price between fractionated coconut oil, which is just liquid coconut oil that doesn't harden, and expensive cold pressed olive oil. So you need some sort of carrier oil, and you need a glass jar that we will steep the dried plant material and the oil in, something with an airtight lid. And then you need another jar to store the oil that we will strain off, which is the infused oil, the comfrey leaf infused oil. You'll need a storage jar, so you can use something like this that has like a rubber seal in it, or you can buy something fancy like this. Amberglass is good for infused oils because it helps protect the medicinal benefits within that oil from UV light, but to be honest, use what you have. The reason I have these and the reason I use them is because I found that when I was making a lot of these remedies, I, for some reason, just didn't use them as much unless they looked like products that I would buy in the store. It's my own weakness. I don't know what causes that. And slowly it's changing as I make more and more, but I needed whatever the lotion or the body butter or face cream or salve to sort of look like it would look if it was being sold to me in a store. So I bought some of these, it came in like a 12 pack, and now I just use them for salves and stuff. You will also need like cheesecloth or mesh strainer to strain off the oil. I have these cheesecloths that I use all the time, and you can have a funnel to help you get it into your container without spilling a ton. You'll also need beeswax to add into the final salve to give it more of a hardened texture. I find it very preferable to use beeswax pellets. You can also buy a chunk of beeswax. Maybe you have like a local farm that sells chunks of beeswax. You can use a grater to just grate off the beeswax. What you don't want to do is put like a big chunk of beeswax into a double boiler to try to melt it, because it will take forever, and some of the beeswax will melt way before other parts, and then it will kind of boil off some of the benefits of the beeswax. So try to get beeswax pellets or grate your beeswax before you melt it. And you'll need a double boiler to melt that beeswax in. So I don't have a double boiler, but I use a saucepan with this little glass jar or bowl that I bought at a thrift store. Whenever you're using beeswax, you really want to understand that it doesn't come off of things easily. So I have a dedicated bowl that I melt beeswax in every time for everything that I make using beeswax, and I have a dedicated whisk that I bought at a thrift store as well for like 50 cents or something, that I use because it's really impossible. You can see on here, it's from my last escapades making something. You can see the beeswax is still on there. It's really pretty impossible to fully remove it. So if you don't want to get your kitchen stuff covered in beeswax, I recommend just buying a cheap bowl that's heat safe and a whisk to help you. And what else? We will need, I'm adding vitamin E oil into my salve as well. It's optional, but it helps to preserve the salve a bit longer. But if you don't have any, don't worry about that. So yeah, beeswax, dried comfrey leaf, some sort of carrier oil, a glass jar with an airtight lid to steep everything in, a double boiler or one you fashioned up with what you have, like me, to melt the beeswax, and a whisk, and that's about it. So the first thing you're gonna do is add the dried comfrey leaf to your glass jar. In terms of measurements, so I was experimenting with the recipe a little bit, and in terms of exact measurements, what I've landed on is using about a cup of dried comfrey leaf, about a cup or a little bit more of your carrier oil to completely cover that dried leaf, and then you just set it somewhere dark and just somewhere that's out of direct sunlight. It can be room temperature, it doesn't have to be cold or anything. And then usually the next day, because we're using dried plant material, I go back in and top it up because once the plant material absorbs some of the carrier oil, you'll notice that you'll need a bit more oil. So you just top it up a bit more, and then you add the lid again and let it sit for about 6 weeks. I have had mine sitting for about that long, and here's what it looks like. So it's a dark, rich oil that's sort of taking on that comfrey color a little bit. If you don't want to wait 6 weeks to have this steep, it's a long time to wait. You can also put your glass jar that you have the herb in with the oil into a double boiler. So like set this in a saucepan with water and very, very gently heat the water. So take it to a level of just before it simmers. So very, very gentle heat. And you can allow it to infuse over that very light heat for, 4 hours. And that'll kind of accelerate the extraction process of the oil, drawing out the medicinal benefits of the comfrey. So if you're watching this video right before Christmas and you want to make this for a gift or something, you can do it that way and avoid having to wait the whole 6 weeks. But I tend to like to let it sit as long as possible to make sure all of those benefits are extracted from the plant material. And I haven't ever, tested the degree of nutrition in the heated oil on the stove for like 4 hours versus something that sat for 6 weeks, but I'm just assuming that the longer it sits, the more that it can extract. So I like to just leave it sit. You just have to be thinking a bit ahead of what you're gonna do. Same with tinctures, making a mullein tincture in July seems a bit early for cold and flu season, but 8 weeks later and you're needing it. So it's just good to, once you start making more herbal remedies, you start to think about what you're going to need to do well in advance of actually having it ready. So I'm going to now strain this off using cheesecloth. So you can see the green shade of comfrey in the oil. And I've tried to squeeze as much olive oil out of that cheesecloth as I could so I don't waste any. And yeah, it doesn't have much of a scent to it other than olive oil, which I like. I like very neutral smelling body products. Next, I'm going to add about 4 tablespoons of beeswax pellets to my double boiler and melt those down. And now I'm just going to go to my kitchen and melt these down. Okay, so I've melted my beeswax, and I've got to work a little bit quick at this stage because the beeswax hardens pretty quickly. What I'm going to do is add into my somewhat, not boiling hot beeswax. It's cooled for about a minute. I am going to add my comfrey leaf oil, and then I'm going to whisk it together. So again, this is about 1 cup-ish of oil going into 4 tablespoons of melted beeswax. You can see that the beeswax has already begun to harden. What you can do if that happens to you is just bring your bowl over your double boiler. So mine's in the kitchen, so I'm not going to do it, but if you had yours next to you in the kitchen, you can just set this bowl back on top so the steam is continuing to heat the beeswax but not boil it, because you don't want to put infused oils like this comfrey leaf infused oil over like boiling water, because it will zap some of the medicinal properties. But if it's just like, the steam, it should be totally fine. So now what I'm going to do is pour this mixture, which is our melted salve, into my fancy little container. Again, you can use whatever you have. I used to use, just jam jars or whatever. I just have gotten a little bit fancy lately. Just pop this jar on top of there in case I spill. Boop. Whoa, right to the top. So it's filled right to the top. I have a little tiny bit left, so I'll have to figure out a place to store that. But here's what it looks like. It's slowly hardening. It'll take a few hours though, so I'll come back and show you what it looks like. But I like this subtle green tinge to it, which is telling you that it has been infused with that comfrey leaf, and some of the medicinal benefits are in the olive oil, which we used in this salve. So I ended up splitting my batch into 2 because I had a little bit extra. And here's what it looks like, nice and hardened. I put a little bit of dried leaf on top just to take some photos for my website, but I've removed most of them now, and it's nice and soft and spreadable. So in terms of using the salve, it's definitely for external use only. Comfrey leaf used in excess or internally can hurt your liver, so just use it on your skin. And also, you don't want to use it on open wounds. You want to use it on like dry skin, bug bites, that sort of thing. Or aches and pains. If you have like a backache or a joint that hurts, you can rub a small amount of this on that area. I like to use it like twice a day. If I get a small kitchen burn or if I have a backache, I'll just take a little bit on my fingers and rub it in the area. Beeswax hardens up. You know, obviously it's a solid product when it's not on heat. And so sometimes with homemade beeswax products, you need to kind of rub your fingers on the salve a little bit to warm it up slightly. So a little bit of the beeswax becomes soft again. Take a little dab of it and then rub it on the area that's sore or the bug bite. This salve should last, you know, a long time if it's stored, you know, you don't want to store it somewhere that's very humid or hot. It will make it very soft and will make it potentially spoil more quickly. But yeah, I mean, for many, many months this should last. And yeah, that's really as simple as it is. It's just those 3 ingredients, the comfrey leaf, the carrier oil, and the beeswax. Just a very minimal, natural, gentle, and helpful remedy to help with itchy skin and that sort of thing. So I hope you give it a try. If you do, let me know in the comments and let me know how you get on and tell me your favorite salves. I'm going to start to make some more salves here on this channel and up for my website, Documenting Simple Living. I'm going to make a calendula salve and a few others I have planned. So if you have any cool, really tried and true recipes, let me know and I'll give them a try as well. So until next time, thank you for stopping by and I'll speak to you in the next video.